My husband said his mom would stay for a couple of weeks. That was 3 years ago. My mother-in-law controls our house, criticizes me in front of the kids, and threatens divorce if I ask her to move out. I'm sitting in my car outside a coffee shop at 7 a.m. writing this because it's literally the only place I can find peace anymore. I never thought I'd be that woman complaining about her mother-in-law on the internet, but here we are. I'm 35, been married for 8 years, and I genuinely don't know how much more of this I can take. It started innocently enough. My husband got a call 3 years ago saying his mom needed somewhere to stay temporarily. She'd been living with his sister, but apparently that situation had become impossible, though now I'm starting to understand why. She showed up with 2 suitcases and a story about needing just a few weeks to get back on her feet after some financial troubles. Those 2 suitcases have somehow multiplied into an entire basement full of belongings. She's essentially moved in permanently, and my husband acts like this is completely normal. When I bring it up, he gets defensive and starts talking about family obligations and how I should be grateful she helps with the kids. The help is where things get really complicated. She does watch our 2 kids after school, and I'll admit that's been useful since my work schedule can be demanding. But the cost of this help has been my sanity and my marriage. She's turned my own home into a place where I feel like an unwelcome guest. She's rearranged our living room furniture at least 6 times. Each time, she has some justification about feng shui or better traffic flow or whatever she read online that week. I come home from work to find my couch in a completely different spot, my family photos moved around, and when I mention it, she acts like I'm being petty for caring about where my own furniture goes. The kitchen situation is even worse. She's thrown away my spice rack twice because she decided the spices were too old without asking me. These weren't expired spices, they were specialty ones I'd collected over years, some brought back from trips, others gifts from friends. When I got upset about it, she told my husband I was being dramatic over some old seasonings. But the absolute worst part is how she undermines me with my own children. She tells them I'm too strict when I ask them to clean their rooms. She gives them candy before dinner after I've specifically said no. She contradicts my parenting decisions right in front of them, then acts innocent when I confront her about it. Last month I had to have a serious conversation with my 8-year-old about lying because she'd been covering for him when he didn't do his homework. Instead of supporting me, she told him loud enough for me to hear that some people just don't understand how hard school can be for kids. The message was clear: I'm the mean mom, she's the understanding grandma. My husband's response to all of this is infuriating. He sees his mother as this selfless woman who sacrificed everything to help our family. He doesn't see the daily power struggles, the passive-aggressive comments, or how she's slowly taking over every aspect of our household. When I try to explain how I feel like a stranger in my own home, he accuses me of being ungrateful and selfish. The financial aspect makes everything more complicated. She does contribute some money for groceries and utilities, but she also has opinions about how we spend our money. She questioned why I bought organic milk, suggested we didn't need cable, and even commented on my clothing purchases. It's like having a financial advisor I never asked for monitoring every decision. 6 months ago, I finally reached my breaking point and told my husband we needed to set a timeline for his mother to find her own place. That's when he dropped the bombshell that changed everything. He told me if I couldn't accept his mother as part of our family, maybe I should reconsider whether this marriage was right for me. He actually threatened divorce over asking his mother to get her own apartment. The conversation got heated and he said things that still echo in my head. He told me his mother raised him as a single parent and deserved our respect and care. He said I was being selfish and that if I forced him to choose between his wife and his mother, I might not like his decision. The implication was crystal clear: she wasn't going anywhere, and if I had a problem with that, I could be the one to leave. That night, I lay awake thinking about my options. I could push the issue and potentially lose my marriage and my children. I could accept the situation and slowly lose myself in the process. Or I could find some way to make this work that didn't involve destroying my family. None of these options felt like winning. I started documenting everything. Every rearranged room, every undermined parenting decision, every passive-aggressive comment. I thought maybe if I could show my husband a pattern, he'd understand why this was so difficult for me. Instead, when I showed him my notes, he said I was being obsessive and that keeping track of his mother's actions was disturbing. The isolation has been the hardest part. I can't talk to my friends about this because it sounds so petty when I explain it. Who complains about free childcare and help around the house? I've tried talking to my sister, but she just says I should be grateful for the help and that every family has adjustments to make. My mother-in-law has gotten bolder over time. She started answering my phone when I'm not home, telling people I'm busy with work again, in a tone that suggests I'm neglecting my family. She's rearranged my bedroom closet because she thought my clothes weren't organized efficiently. She's even started planning family activities without consulting me, then acting hurt when I'm not enthusiastic about plans made without my input. The kids have definitely noticed the tension. My daughter asked me why I seem sad all the time, and I didn't know how to explain that I feel like I'm slowly disappearing in my own life. My son has started going to his grandmother first when he needs something, bypassing me entirely. I know she encourages this, but trying to address it makes me look petty and jealous. 3 months ago, something happened that made me realize how far this situation had deteriorated. I came home from a particularly stressful day at work to find my mother-in-law had decided to surprise me by redecorating our bedroom. She'd moved our bed, changed the curtains, and rearranged all my personal items. When I walked in and saw what she'd done, I just started crying. She found me sitting on the floor of my own bedroom, sobbing over the fact that nothing in my house felt like mine anymore. Instead of apologizing or showing any understanding, she told me I should be grateful she'd taken the time to make the room more welcoming. She said I obviously didn't have time to keep things nice, so she was helping. That's when I realized this wasn't just about living arrangements or personality clashes. This was about power and control. She was systematically taking over every aspect of my life, and my husband was not only allowing it but defending it. I felt like I was being erased from my own existence. I started staying late at work, not because I had to, but because I dreaded coming home. I'd sit in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, gathering the energy to walk into a house where I felt like an intruder. I started eating lunch alone in my car instead of with colleagues because I needed that time to decompress from the morning's interactions with her. The breaking point came last month when I discovered she'd been going through my mail. I found her reading a letter from my doctor about some routine test results. When I confronted her, she said she was just trying to help organize things and didn't realize it was private. But the way she said it, with that innocent smile, made it clear she knew exactly what she was doing. I told my husband about the mail incident, and he said I was overreacting. He suggested maybe I was stressed from work and reading too much into innocent actions. He actually suggested I might need to talk to someone about my paranoia regarding his mother. That's when I realized he wasn't just failing to support me, he was actively gaslighting me about my own experiences. Update. I can't believe how much my life has changed since I posted this. The support from everyone here gave me the courage to do something I never thought I'd be able to do. I decided to stop trying to convince my husband to see my perspective and started taking action to protect my own sanity and my relationship with my children. First, I changed all the passwords on our accounts and started having important mail sent to a P.O. box. I know this sounds extreme, but I needed to have some boundaries that couldn't be crossed. When my mother-in-law discovered she couldn't access our online accounts anymore, she was furious. She told my husband I was being secretive and controlling, but I stood my ground. I also started spending more one-on-one time with each of my kids away from the house. I'd take them out for ice cream to the park, or just for drives where we could talk without her listening in. It was during one of these conversations that my daughter told me something that broke my heart but also opened my eyes. She said her grandmother had been telling her and her brother that I didn't really want to spend time with them because I was always working or in my room. She'd been systematically poisoning my relationship with my own children by portraying me as the absent, uncaring parent while positioning herself as the one who was always there for them. When I confronted my husband about this, he finally seemed to understand that something was seriously wrong. Maybe it was because it involved the kids, or maybe he finally saw the manipulation for what it was, but he actually listened to me for the first time in months. We had a long, difficult conversation about what had been happening in our house. He admitted he'd been so focused on feeling guilty about his mother's situation that he hadn't really been paying attention to how it was affecting me and our marriage. He said he'd been defensive because he felt caught between two people he loved, but he realized he'd been sacrificing our marriage to avoid conflict with his mother. We decided to go to family counseling together, not because there was anything wrong with us individually, but because we needed help navigating this situation without destroying our marriage. The counselor helped us understand that setting boundaries with extended family isn't cruel or selfish, it's necessary for a healthy marriage. With the counselor's guidance, we developed a plan. We would tell my mother-in-law that she needed to find her own place within 3 months. We'd help her with the transition, but we needed our space back to work on our marriage and focus on our family. We also established rules about her interactions with the kids and her involvement in household decisions. The conversation with my mother-in-law was as awful as I expected. She cried, she accused me of breaking up the family, and she told my husband he was choosing wrong. But he stood firm. For the first time in 3 years, he put our marriage first. It wasn't easy for him, and I could see how much it hurt him to disappoint his mother, but he did it. She's been looking for apartments, though not without a lot of drama and guilt trips. She's found several places she claims are unsuitable for various reasons, but the deadline is firm. She's also been much more careful about overstepping boundaries since we set clear consequences for her behavior. The kids were confused at first, but we explained that sometimes families need space to grow and be healthy. We assured them they'd still see their grandmother regularly, but that she'd have her own home where they could visit her. They seem to accept this explanation, and I've noticed they're more relaxed now that there's less tension in the house. Update 2. The 3-month deadline came and went, and my mother-in-law did not move out. She found excuse after excuse, and I watched my husband struggle with enforcing the boundary we'd set. She'd found an apartment she claimed to like, but then said the landlord was discriminatory and she couldn't possibly live there. Then she found another place that was too expensive despite being within the budget we'd discussed. I realized she was playing a waiting game, hoping we'd give up and let her stay. But I changed too much to go back to the way things were. I told my husband that if she wasn't out by the end of the month, I was taking the kids and staying with my sister until he figured out his priorities. This ultimatum forced his hand in a way I hadn't expected. Instead of choosing between his mother and his wife, he found a third option. He helped his mother put a deposit down on an apartment and told her she had 1 week to move in. He said he'd pay her first month's rent and security deposit, but after that, she was on her own financially. The move-out day was tense and emotional. She packed slowly, making comments about how she'd never expected to be thrown out by her own son. She hugged the kids goodbye like she was never going to see them again, which made them cry and question why she had to leave. It was heartbreaking to watch, but I knew it was necessary. The first week after she moved out was strange. The house felt empty in a way that was both wonderful and unsettling. I kept waiting for her to walk through the door or to find that she'd rearranged something while I was at work. It took time to believe that I could come home to the same house I'd left that morning. But then something beautiful started happening. My husband and I began talking again, really talking, about things other than his mother and household management. We started making decisions together about family activities and house projects. The kids began coming to me first when they needed things, and I could parent them without someone undermining my decisions. I rearranged the living room the way I wanted it and left it that way. I bought new spices and organized them how I liked. I answered my own phone and made my own plans. These sound like such small things, but they felt revolutionary after 3 years of having no control over my own space. My mother-in-law calls frequently and visits twice a week. The visits are scheduled and have time limits, which has made them much more manageable. She still makes passive-aggressive comments sometimes, but they don't have the same power when she's not living in my house. I can listen to her criticism about my parenting or housekeeping and then watch her leave at the end of the visit. The relationship between my husband and his mother has actually improved now that they're not living together. He can be her son without having to be her roommate, and she can be our children's grandmother without being their substitute parent. The guilt and resentment that had built up over 3 years of forced cohabitation has started to fade. Final update. It's been 6 months since my mother-in-law moved out, and I wanted to share how things have evolved because this situation taught me so much about marriage, boundaries, and finding my voice when I thought I'd lost it completely. The most surprising thing has been how much my relationship with my mother-in-law has improved. When she was living with us, every interaction felt like a battle for territory. Now that she has her own space and we have ours, we can actually enjoy each other's company sometimes. She's still opinionated and can be difficult, but those traits are much easier to handle when I know she's going home at the end of the day. She's also had to become more independent, which has been good for her. Living with us had made her lazy about managing her own life. Now she has to handle her own bills, maintain her own space, and make her own social connections. She's joined a book club at the library and has made friends with her neighbors. She seems happier and more fulfilled than she was when her whole world revolved around our household. My marriage has transformed in ways I didn't expect. My husband and I had to learn how to be partners again instead of just two people managing a difficult situation. We'd gotten so used to walking on eggshells and avoiding conflict that we'd forgotten how to have normal conversations about everyday things. We've been working on communication and trust. He's had to learn how to support me even when it's uncomfortable, and I've had to learn how to speak up for myself instead of just documenting problems and hoping he'd figure them out. It's been hard work, but our marriage is stronger now than it was before his mother moved in. The kids adjusted better than I expected. They were sad about their grandmother moving out at first, but they've come to enjoy their visits with her more now that they're special occasions rather than everyday occurrences. They have their own rooms back and they seem more relaxed without the constant undercurrent of tension that had become normal in our house. My daughter told me last week that she likes how peaceful our house feels now. She said she didn't realize how much the arguing and stress had been affecting her until it stopped. My son has started coming to me with problems again instead of always going to his grandmother first. These changes have made me realize how much the situation had been damaging my relationships with my own children. I've also learned things about myself that I wouldn't have discovered otherwise. I found out I'm much stronger than I thought I was, but also that I need to speak up earlier when something isn't working. I spent 3 years being miserable instead of addressing the problem directly because I was afraid of being seen as the difficult daughter-in-law. Looking back, I think I enabled the situation by trying so hard to be understanding and accommodating. I thought if I was patient enough and kind enough, the problems would resolve themselves. But some situations require direct action, even when that action is uncomfortable for everyone involved. The experience also taught me about the difference between being supportive and being a doormat. I thought being a good wife meant never complaining about my husband's family, but I learned that protecting my marriage sometimes means having difficult conversations and setting boundaries that might upset people. I still get frustrated sometimes when my mother-in-law makes comments about my parenting or my housekeeping, but now I can respond in the moment instead of letting resentment build up. I can say something like, "I appreciate your concern, but we're handling it this way," without feeling like I'm starting World War III. My husband has also gotten better at managing his mother's expectations and supporting my decisions. He's learned to say things like, "That's between me and my wife," when she tries to get involved in our personal business, and he backs me up when I set boundaries with the kids instead of undermining me to keep peace. The financial pressure is gone too. We're not supporting an extra adult and we don't have someone monitoring our spending habits. We can make decisions about our money without having to justify them to someone who isn't contributing equally to the household income. Most importantly, I feel like myself again. I come home from work looking forward to spending time with my family instead of dreading walking through my own front door. I can make plans for my house and my life without having to consider someone else's preferences about everything. I know not everyone who reads this will be in a position to make the same choices I made. Some people have cultural or financial constraints that make it impossible to ask extended family to move out. But I hope my story helps someone recognize that they don't have to sacrifice their mental health in their marriage to keep other people comfortable. If you're in a similar situation, please know that you deserve to feel comfortable in your own home. You deserve to have your boundaries respected and your parenting decisions supported. You deserve a partner who puts your marriage first, even when it's difficult. And you deserve to speak up for yourself, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. The last 3.5 years have been the most challenging of my marriage, but they've also taught me more about love, respect, and partnership than I learned in the first 8 years we were together. Sometimes the most difficult situations force us to grow in ways we never would have chosen, but desperately needed. Our house is quiet now as I write this. My husband is reading in the living room with furniture arranged exactly how we like it. The kids are asleep in their own rooms. My mother-in-law is probably watching TV in her own apartment, and tomorrow she'll call to tell us about her book club meeting. And I'm sitting at my own kitchen table in my own house, writing about how I learned to fight for my own life. It's not the ending I expected when this all started, but it's the one I needed.